Hello and welcome to Illumination Podcast with Nick and KISMA. I'm Nick, and today we are talking about how to give feedback to close friends and partners without seeming critical.
Hello and welcome to Illumination Podcast with Nick and KISMA, bringing you ancient wisdom for modern day success so that you can have the mindset to get your life and business set.
As always, thank you for tuning in. And if you're new to the podcast, take a quick second to hit the subscribe button in iTunes, SoundCloud, or Stitcher. If you want to get the inside info for this and every episode, as well as some free gifts, go to illuminationacademy.net/podcasts. And now let's dive in to get your mindset for your life and business set. Well, hey there, KISMA.
Hello.
How are you?
Very well, thank you. Recording on a Friday night.
We are. It's like a date night recording, kind of.
And we might watch The Great British Bake Off, which we're obsessed with.
Totally. We're still into it.
I have to talk about this.
Okay.
Not as obsessed.
So let's get into it.
We had the fortune and unfortune of starting in the most recent season.
Yes.
Because Zoe was here visiting and, she was watching something and I was like, what is this? This is really funny. Like there was this guy that looked like a vampire and people baking. I'm like, what is this? And she goes, it's the Great British Bake Off. I was like, what? And of course we started watching. I love all things British. And it became this really fun, like Nick would make dinner. We'd all sit down and watch one episode. And we were in the last season. And it was so good because it was Noel, what's his name? Noel Fielding or something.
I can't remember his last name. Yeah.
Comedian, follow him. And then Matt Lucas, they were the presenters, hilarious. And then of course we've got Paul Hollywood and Prue Leaf. I should know these things, but whatever. I mean, I want Prue to adopt me. It was so fun. So we watched that whole thing and became very attached to the characters. Every week someone's going home. And then that was over. And then we started to go backwards.
Yeah.
And then the season before that, Matt Lucas wasn't on. It was Noel and Sandy.
Yeah.
And then before that was Noel and Sandy. We had a couple of seasons of them and then backwards again. And it was these two women that I don't know.
Well, we were back into the BBC, right?
We're back in the PBS.
Oh, PBS.
I guess it is.
Yeah.
And you can tell, once it left PBS and went to Channel 4, it was a little bit more glitzy. People are it's
just more polished.
It's just more polished and cool. And anyways, I'm not sure why I went down that rabbit hole, but
you just had to get it out.
I had to get it out that this is between Schitt's Creek and the Great British Bake Off or baking show. It really brought joy to my life during this pandemic.
It totally did. Yeah. So, speaking of feedback, that's
right.
Interesting.
Right.
I guess just kind of like subconsciously came through here. But that's actually one of the things I really appreciate about the show is how cleanly both Prue and Paul and Mary and the older ones, but I'll be honest, I favor Prue.
Oh, Prue is, love her.
I really do. Mary was okay. She's nice.
She's a legend in her own right. Yeah. Mary Berry.
And Paul too. Paul's really, and he's an intimidating dude, but man, they give feedback in just a really clear way.
Right.
And I don't know. I think there's a real skill to that.
There's a real skill. And of course, on the other end, it reminds me of my musician days. You really have to have the skin to take it and use what's valuable. And if you disagree with it, you let it go.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But I think I see both sides of that, where the way that they deliver it makes it so much easier, and so you don't see on that show, you don't see a lot of people arguing with them about that. They might get a little bit, rant, well, that's the way I like it kind of thing.
Yeah, we heard that.
But you're not having any,
he backs it up. Paul's underbaked, whatever, this, and this. It's a shame.
Yeah, it's a shame. Yeah, they shame them. It's a real shame.
It's a disappointment. I'm disappointed, honestly.
Yeah. It's really fascinating. Anyway, so it ties in really beautifully because the topic today is about how to give feedback to close friends and partners without seeming critical.
Yeah. And so I can make this episode really short and just say don't. I just don't give feedback. I'm going to start there. Let's start here. Why do you think it's up to you to give feedback? I'm just going to start there because it is kind of this weird phenomenon that we humans go around life feeling that we need to tell people our thoughts without being asked. So everyone just take a breath there. It's a human thing where we go around feeling like we have to tell people our thoughts and opinions about them without being asked.
Yeah,
so just don't.
Unexpected. I didn't expect that to be your first one.
No, it really is. Everyone, people.
But I think you're right.
But why would you?
Yeah.
Now, of course, if you're in a close relationship and there's discussion and I think that's a whole nother episode, honestly. And we talked a little bit about that on the IRS episode of how I sort of gave you feedback, but I think I asked first, but I was very gentle. But when you have friends and you have relatives and they have different opinions, I think the starting place, the clean slate, is to not make somebody else's opinion wrong.
Right.
Don't make them wrong because they think differently, they believe differently, they act differently. Who are we to expect someone to think, act, and believe like we do? So that's just the starting point. Now, I know that many of our listeners are like, but we know things and we want to help. And that's in the spirit of it, right? They might hear someone using language or criticizing themselves and they know what that's doing. And so I think, our listeners, you're all like, this is what you want to help with.
Right.
You want to help. You want to give feedback because you want the person that you love or your friend that you love, you want their life to be better.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's
the intention. I think that most people are going to approach this with.
I think you're right. Although to be fair, there may be a certain amount of just kind of venting of irritants and things like that going on too. And that's a very human thing. Like they always do this thing, like, how can I get them to stop doing, throwing their dirty socks on the floor or whatever the thing is. Not that happens around here. No.
If it does, I pick it up right away because I can't handle it. So I just don't talk about it. I just do it.
I try to be respectful of that.
Yeah.
So I think there's a little bit of both going on, but I agree with you. I think the major part of this, like, I just want to help, you can see where you're tripping yourself up. I'm sure you ran into this in parenting, especially at a younger age, you probably ran into a fair amount of that as well. So I defer to you. Like, I know you're the expert on this. Like, tell me more.
Well, I think the first place, like I said, that starting point is don't make somebody wrong and check yourself. Who are you to give the feedback? We have to go there because otherwise it starts to get really messy. It gets messy karmically. It gets messy ego-wise. And there's a lack of respect to the other person. And then if you think there's something that they are doing or saying or being, and you really feel like you can help, you've got to ask permission. You simply have to respect the human enough to ask permission. Hey, I notice, for instance, let's just use an example because sometimes when we have like a really strong example, it's easier to understand. You have a friend who is always complaining and they're never happy and they never seem to have the love of their life. They never seem to have enough money. And all they do is talk about how rough life is. This is going to be a heavy friendship for someone that doesn't think that way, that doesn't believe that. And I can understand where the friend is like, either I can't hang out with this person or I want to give them feedback. I want them to see what I see. So it's a gentle entry and it's also very honest and kind. And I feel it's just like this. Hey, Judy, I've got a question for you. Well, what's that? I noticed that you seem to be talking about what isn't working in your life quite a bit these days. I have an idea that I see as a solution. I would like to share it with you, but first I want your permission. Would you like to hear what I'm thinking? It will be either yes or no. If it's a maybe, I don't even know what to do with a maybe.
Don't you just say, are you really sure? Or maybe just take it away a little bit. Just say it's totally okay if you don't. Like, I won't be offended. I think.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't say it's a yes. I'm just in my mind. I'm thinking out loud.
But it's true. What you do, sometimes you hear that kind of maybe.
Yeah. And I think it's okay. You're not in trouble. You're not doing anything wrong. I just think it might be beneficial. Like, would it be okay if I shared it with you?
And if you don't want to, that's okay too.
Yeah.
I think giving them an opt-out or an opt-in is really helpful. Kind of goes back to the previous episode when we talked about the art of allowing.
Yeah.
And this is a kind of important piece of that too, is letting people opt in.
Right. Letting people opt in. So then with many of you who listen and are very smart and brilliant, and you probably have a list of 10 things that you could tell Judy, start with one. One thing. When we look at the really great metaphysical teachers that will teach things of changing a certain thing, go declutter, bless your bills. Especially like Catherine Ponder's amazing at that. Florence Scovel-Shinn was. It's just like, start with one thing. Here's what I think would really help if you took this one thing, and I've done it in my life and it's really helped. And here's what it is.
God, that is brilliant advice.
One thing.
It's so easy to overteach, overshare, give them a whole litany of things or a whole 5-step plan that they, how would you receive that? You think about that, like, it's kind of overwhelming.
It's a fire hose and then all of a sudden, if this person isn't feeling great about their life, they're taking it as, and humans get triggered and they get into the need to be right. And then you might get into the need to be right. And all of a sudden it goes out the window.
It's all about all the things that person's doing. They're going to take it as all the things that I'm doing wrong or not good enough or whatever. Like there's a story around that. When you see somebody not being, really not being their best self, like there's stuff going on inside of there, there's, and so, I don't want to get into just treating them with kid gloves kind of thing, but I think that the way that you described it as like giving them a chance to opt in, and then just one simple thing.
Yeah. And leave it at that. And you can give an example. It's like, when I did this, X, Y, and Z happened. It really worked. And if you need any help, let me know. And after you try that, there's some other things that I've been doing that have been really helpful that you might like too. And at that point, they might say, well, what else?
Oh,
and then you can say, well, let me share one more thing because, I don't want to be dumping my stuff on you, but here's one more thing you could try. And so there's 2 things like, why don't you try it for a couple of weeks and see how it is?
Yeah.
And it depends on the relationship. What can happen then is you just drop it. You've given, they choose to receive and use it or not. It is not up to you to go like checking in on them. Did you do my thing? Did you text them? Did you do my thing? No, you let them choose. And then you could, though, in the process of the feedback, say, is there a time that you want to come back together and talk about this and see how it worked for you? Or do you want me to just here it is, take it and run with it? Because I don't want to be bugging you. And there it is.
Oh, that's really good.
And then cut cords, everyone, and let go if the people aren't doing, speaking, acting, believing like you are.
Yeah.
That's the biggest piece.
Yeah. No, I love how you describe that. That's really so great. Sometimes I like how I think about it. It's such a weird, I'm going to go down a weird trail right here for a second, but this is how my brain works, right? Big shocker, everybody. I remember this scene in Sling Blade with Billy Bob Thornton, and he's fixing the lawnmower. And the guy is totally perplexed with the lawnmower and stuff. And he comes and they're like, Carl, come on over here and check it out. And he just asks a simple question. He's like, did you check those points? And the guy's like, no, I didn't check those points. He's like, well, it's probably that. But he did it in such a Carl way, such a simple way. It's weird that we're talking about this. It just always stuck out to me. I'm like, wow, what a simple way to just he didn't make anybody wrong. Yeah. And he just asked. And that's one of the things, that's how I kind of handle it sometimes. Now that I'm listening to you talk about it, I'm kind of thinking about maybe revisiting that. But if I happen to hear them again in that same kind of mode, I might say, hey, did you get a chance to try that out? Or something, just really gently though, gently. And inevitably they're like, oh man, I totally forgot about that. And a lot of times they'll just say, and thanks for reminding me. Yeah. Or something like that. Very rarely has it ever been, well, get off my back or anything like that, because there's no charge on it from my part. I'm really just from my aspect, I'm just asking a really clean question like, hey, did you get a chance to do that? Just like Carl, Yeah.
I think the other thing too, let's say we're talking about something more tangible, but we were talking about baking earlier. Someone makes you dinner. and they're making dinner. They want you to know what you think. Like, it's true. Like, I'm trying this recipe out. What do you think?
Oh, good. Yeah, good
so
example.
That's a very clear, I want your honest opinion. And I think you get clear, like, oh, you want me to give you my honest opinion, what you think about the recipe. Okay, cool. And then you give your honest opinion. I mean, you always appreciate the effort. Let's say you don't like the dish. Hey, this is so great. Thank you for doing this. You wanted my honest opinion. It's a little bit too salty, or I'm not crazy about the parsley or whatever, but thank you so much.
Yeah.
Like, easy. I think we put so much charge behind things in life that it gets sticky in the communication. And then people have not only lost the art of giving feedback, they can't take it.
Right.
Because there's so much need to be right, in charge, and trying to prove themselves and the whole thing.
Defensiveness.
It's like, yeah. Mm-hmm. And I think that has been cool about watching the Great British Bake Off. Like, they just have to stand there and be like, yep, undercooked. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. They know it too. Like,
they know it, and they've learned something. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you see them I got to think, like, we're probably some of the only people who watch the show in this way, you know, like, what are the personal development lessons in the Great British Bake Off? But you see them, they'll drop real gems, you know, like Paul will say, you know, we've seen this from you a couple times. You got to you got to make things more simple so you give yourself a chance to succeed. You know, like they'll totally give them those gems.
Right.
And it's up to the people to receive it.
Right. Yeah. Noel Fielding. I want him to be my life coach.
Noel's really good at it.
He's so great.
Yeah.
He knows just when to sweep in and lift somebody up, or he'll say, I could never do that. Like, he creates it. Like, I could never do that. You know what you're doing.
He's got a real gentleness to him.
Yeah.
And his way he has such a skill with being with people.
Yeah.
Like I wonder if he knows how good he is at that. I'm kind of curious about that. If I ever meet him on the street, I'm totally going to ask him. But he has this way of just being with people, and like, they're melting down, you know, they're crying over their bread and stuff like this, you know, like it's stressful. Mm-hmm. And he just has that way of just kind of stepping in.
Yeah, it's really beautiful.
It really is something to marvel. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's like, I want to hire Noel as my life coach.
I want to share one more thing before we close out this episode on giving feedback. There's also moments, I do this with certain friends, certain family members, where it's like, hey, do you have a few minutes? Yeah, sure. What's going on? And they'll either say, I want to run something by you, or I just got a vent, or, they don't say that. It's just like, I want to run something by you, or do you have a few minutes to talk? If it's a thing, like if they're going to talk about something specific, I always stop and say, hey, before you get going, do you want me to just listen? Am I just a sounding board because you need to vent, or do you want my opinion? Now, of course, I don't do this with a lot of people because this is my profession. Like, this is what I do all day long, right? And people invest a lot of money to work with me because I hold a great space. They've opted in. I'm really good at what I do. But when it's a family member or like a really good friend, I want to be clear. Like, what do you want from me? So that I'm in that mindset. And if they're like, well, I'd love your opinion, it's going to be very clear and concise and something to help them move forward. It's not going to be a whole, like I would a coaching session. But I just want to know, because it's really easy for me to start being like, well, you should do this or that, or try this. And they don't want that.
Yeah.
They just wanted to be heard.
And a lot of folks are living life in problem solving mode, right? So it's really easy to drop in with that when sometimes people just need to be heard.
Yeah.
That for me is one of the biggest transitions, of just take and if they just want to vent, it takes off so much pressure,
right?
Because you don't have to solve anything.
Right.
That's all they want is to vent, and you can just let them vent.
Right. You
don't even have to, you probably should pay attention, but they're probably not going to notice if you don't pay 100% attention. It's okay, and it just takes all that pressure off you.
Yeah.
And if they're like, no, I really do want to hear your feedback, then you get to drop in a different way and really listen with different ears. You're not in that in between of like, well, what do I say? What do I not say?
And finally, if they said, I just want to vent, and they vent, and you're sensing something is really off, and you do have a good relationship with them, which I think you would if you're having that conversation, you can then say, hey, I'm sensing something, I'm hearing something. If you're interested, I could share, and it doesn't have to be today. but I have a couple of ideas. So just let me know when you want me to text those over to you or have another quick call.
That's so cool. Yeah.
So there you are, everyone. How to give feedback to close friends and partners and family without seeming critical.
I'm probably going to have to go back and re-listen to this episode. There's a lot of really good stuff in here. But number one, just check yourself.
Yeah.
You know, like why are you,
start there.
Why are you even doing that?
Be clean and clear from it.
Yeah. Don't make it wrong. Right. Give them a chance to opt in to it. Did I miss any?
Asking permission.
Oh, asking permission. Yeah.
Asking permission is a big one.
Yeah. Really big one.
So it's so cool. Well, everyone, we love you. Thank you for listening to Illumination Podcast with Nick and KISMA. Share this episode, give us a rating, review, and please do touch base if there's a topic you would like for us to talk about. Send an email to hello@illuminationpodcast.com. Namaste.
Namaste.
Hey, thanks for jamming with us today. And if you enjoy Illumination Podcast, please go ahead and share it with someone you love. Give us a rating, review, download our podcast. And remember, you can find us at illuminationacademy.net/podcasts. Talk to you soon. Namaste.